Is there anything you look for in those early moments of a relationship that you think this is an investment?
I look for people who want to connect as people, right? I look for people who want to, I try to listen actively and listen genuinely and learn about people and get to understand them. And I look for people who want to do the same with me.
For advice for junior lawyers or lawyers in your team, setting boundaries or how do you communicate that going into something?
At a basic level, right? At a basic level, we do still tell people, look, try to set some non-negotiables. So for me, right, one of my non-negotiables is lawyers are not always necessary.
Welcome back to Lessons I Learned in Law. On this week's show, I'm joined by Kevin Massie. And Kevin is the General Counsel of Imperial Brands PLC, which is a member of the FTSE 30. He stepped into that position about just over 12 months ago at the time that we were speaking. So we hear a lot about what it's like to land in that executive level position in an organisation like that, where he doesn't just cover legal, he's focused on internal risk and control, governance, and a few other sectors, so a few other areas. So really interesting perspective. We talk about the importance that network has played in his career and building that network, connecting and maintaining ties with the right people without any agenda or objective. And this has played into a lot of his hiring and how he's hired from his network and the success. We talk about succession planning and what it's like as a general counsel to think about who's stepping into this role if I'm to depart. So lots in there for everyone, bit of an alternative take, and I hope you enjoy. Hi Kevin, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really good. It's been a while. I've really enjoyed catching up this morning. It's been a while since we met in person, but known each other for a long time. So good to sit down and record this today.
Yeah.
So I've given a brief introduction to where you're at and bit of context, but if you could just start by giving an overview of your current role and tell us where you're at just now in team size, business, etc.
Yeah, no. So I've got a really interesting role at the moment with Imperial Brands PLC. I am the Chief Legal, Risk, Governance, and Compliance Officer. So okay. I have a wide remit. Basically, I joke that I'm the chief officer of everything that can go wrong.
Okay.
But it's a fantastic role and a really, really good team. Teams in we're in build mode at the moment. We're definitely taking on some new faces, particularly in risk and controls. Mm-hmm. So I've got, I think at the last time I looked, I've got about 250 globally.
Wow.
Across all of the pillars. I think of which, just under half of that are probably in the legal team properly, and the rest are kind of risk, governance, and compliance people.
Okay, right, nice. And how's the team structured? Is it a centralized structure?
Yeah, so we're a bit of a mix, and I think actually some of the work that we're doing right now is trying to standardize a little bit our operating model and see how we show up a little bit more as one team globally. Mm-hmm. Really more in kind of ways of working than anything else. In the US we have a regional model, mm-hmm. And so I have a regional general counsel in the US that looks after kind of the US side of things. Globally, we then have market and cluster lawyers,
okay.
And then we have kind of a central team in Bristol that are more functionally aligned, so around IP litigation, and so it's a bit of a hybrid model, but
mm-hmm.
it works based on the needs of our markets.
Yeah, nice. And FTSE 100.
Yeah, FTSE 30, I think.
Yeah. Crazy.
It's a big company, yeah. And it's interesting because the scale is definitely larger than organizations I worked with in the past. If I go back to my old days in Tullow, from a market cap perspective, they were comparable when Tullow was at its high, but Tullow had 3,000 employees and five major projects, whereas Imperial is many factories, 25 to 30,000 employees. So the scale and the size and complexity of the business is a really interesting challenge that I'm enjoying.
Yeah, nice. And how long has that you've been in the seat now?
Just over a year. So
Okay.
it was a year on the 15th of September, or first of September. Sorry, I almost cheated myself out of 2 weeks there. No, it's gone by so quick.
Yeah.
But it's been fantastic. We've already had some quick wins, and it's interesting actually to see. I'm really feeling like the team is coming together, and I feel like we've got kind of a shared vision and purpose now that we're really trying to embed in the next year.
Nice. Great. Well, we'll talk more about that because the size and the scale of the business and the different hubs, etc. There must be some things learned along the way in terms of getting across that and learning the business and a slightly different sector. So yeah, we'll dive into that. I'm gonna start though just with an icebreaker.
All
I'm
right.
just asking. So if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be if that door was closed? If you were struck off tomorrow, where are we finding you?
Don't tempt the law society. No, if I wasn't a lawyer, it's a good question. I mean, if I go all the way back to when I was in school, if I wasn't going to be a lawyer, I probably would have gone into maybe marketing or advertising, because I really kind of love the creative process. Now, where I am in my life and having kind of developed my hobbies and passions, honestly, I think I'd probably be a farmer.
Okay. Well,
If money was no object, and,
Yeah.
and I could, we've got a small property up in the Peak District. It's only a few acres, and it's just a small vegetable patch, not commercial at all. But
Nice.
I spend many a lovely hour in there, kind of tending to the garden. So I think if I left the law tomorrow,
that'd be it.
you'd find me on the farm.
What's
on
been
my
your
tractor.
best? What's been the hit produce this year?
Oh, listen, I'm a terrible farmer.
Okay.
Right? Like this is why I said if money's no object, right? Like nothing, I can't
the
grow
hobby.
anything, but I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Well, there's all the inheritance tax issues as well at the moment. That's another thing to worry about. But yeah, if money's no object, sounds good. So you're up in the Peak District.
Yeah. So when I joined PZ Cussons, we were living in London at the time, and it was the start of the pandemic. And we took a holiday up to the Peak District and absolutely fell in love with it. My wife is from the Rocky Mountains in Canada, and so
Yeah.
it was a bit of a homecoming. Felt a little bit more natural. So we've been up there. It's fantastic for the kids, and I commute. I've got a heavy travel schedule anyway, so can be based anywhere near an airport. And
Yeah.
it's the benefits of kind of the hybrid working and flexibility. I think it's really helped balance work and family life.
Yeah, sounds ideal. Nice. So we'll jump in then. If we'll start with the lessons. If you could talk us through your first lesson.
Yeah, look, it was difficult. It was difficult narrowing it down to three. It was also difficult coming up with three.
Okay.
But I think that the first lesson that I've really learned, actually, the first lesson I'm still learning, is about work-life balance. And I'm sure you hear this all the time. I'm sure it's a really, really common theme. And I reflected on this and sort of said I've kind of gone in phases and waves, right? And I remember when I was starting out, I was an articling student, or the equivalent of a training contract back in Canada, and it must have been about midnight. Still working on an IPO document, and the partner sort of gave me a few things to work on, and then sort of realized that she kind of hadn't been home in however many days, and sort of gave me a bit of advice that stuck with me for forever, which was, law is a pie eating contest where the prize for winning is pie. And so if you allow it, it will simply consume you.
Right.
And so I think in the first phase of my journey, work-life balance was all about setting boundaries, setting non-negotiables, and saying, I won't do this, I won't miss that.
Okay.
And I think that got me so far. And then I think as I was leaving private practice, one of the partners I was working with gave me another lesson, which was, he said, look, it's not about this or that. It's not binary. It's about blending work and home, and making sure that you set up the structures that allow you to be flexible, so that sometimes you give all of yourself to the job, and sometimes you give all of yourself to the family, and sometimes you blend it. But balance and achieving balance is about setting up structures that allow you to pull one lever or the other to maintain a long-term balance. And I think I really saw that in practice this year, where my wife went through a medical issue that required me to be home more than I normally would, and during the first year of a new and challenging role. So what I learned is, you prioritize in the short term, and then you'll find ways to come back, and you'll find ways to balance it out in the end. So
Yeah.
I think my first lesson is, look, balance is a constant struggle.
Yeah.
But it's not about setting hard and fast rules. It's about setting yourself up with the right structures to flex here and there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, a really good lesson. And yeah, with the year that you've had, by the sounds of it, it's obviously been something you've had to really apply. So, for advice for junior lawyers or lawyers in your team, setting boundaries or like how do you communicate that going into something new, or like setting those boundaries up? Or
so I think it's interesting at a basic level, right? At a basic level, we do still tell people, look, try to set some non-negotiables, right? Try to, if you say to yourself, listen, so for me, right, one of my non-negotiables is Friday night. Friday night at home is movie night with the kids. That's morphed into Saturday now because one of them has swimming lessons. But Friday night was pizza and movie night, and I would just not miss that, right? No matter where I was in the world, I was scheduling my trips that I was traveling back, and I was going to get home for Friday night. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, I made it.
Yeah.
And even if I was away the entire week, setting that non-negotiable, that really worked, right? And also, I think the family appreciated as well that I was busy, but I was always going to carve out that time. But I think the other one is I always encourage them to don't suffer in silence, whether it's be honest about the demands, right? If something at home is pulling you and you need to be there, don't burn yourself out by trying to juggle both. Be honest and upfront and say, look, I need to be over here right now. I'll come back full tilt in a few weeks. And I think that level of honesty and transparency is something I find is often missing in the employer-employee relationship. And so we try and teach our teams to say, look, tell us when you're suffering, because we have tools where we can support and we can help you balance.
Right. Yeah, that must be really supportive. And do you apply the same for like private practice for law firms? Like, how is there much communication on that as a client relationship management piece?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I always try and tell my teams, like, I always want to be a good client, right? I always want to be a client that the firms want to work for. And that's not necessarily a measure of profitability. It's about being honest about deadlines, right? If I need something on Tuesday, I need it on Tuesday, and I'll be really honest with them about that. If I don't need it till Thursday, I'm going to tell them. I find oftentimes it's tempting to shift the pain and shift the balance onto the law firm. But I think if you look at it as a genuine partnership and you look at them as an extension of your own team and try and push the same standards of well-being and care onto them that you would put onto your own team. I think that has payback in the end.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't always work, but I think it's worth the conscious effort.
Yeah. And there's internal cultures there that you're not in control of, and how things operate. But yeah, I think that's a good way to approach a partnership. So you're Canadian background. So how did the move over? How do you find yourself in the UK?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So and I've my daughter's doing some history projects now, and I'm learning just how Canadian I am. Where we found out through doing the history of the family that I'm apparently the first member of my family since we first arrived on the shores in Montreal. Wow. That's left the country and worked overseas. But no, it came about actually. I ended up at 3 different firms in 3 years trying to figure out what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I was probably struggling to find my purpose in private practice. And at the time thought, okay, well, young, no kids, let's go see the world. And I ended up in Dubai right around the time of the financial crisis. And what a time to be a financial and capital markets lawyer in Dubai in the midst of the financial crisis. And so I very quickly became an oil and gas lawyer,
right?
And ended up working with an Australian lawyer who was the partner at Ashurst at the time on that transaction, and he ended up bringing me in house to Cape Town with Tullow Oil. And actually, it was when I moved in house that I realized that's kind of where I wanted to be. I really enjoyed being part of a business, and so 5 years in Cape Town, and then ultimately up to London.
I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Wow. Well, I think when we first met, I was actually still in the Cape Town office. Yeah. But I was doing 1 week Cape Town, 1 week London.
Right. Okay. I must have missed that. Okay. Excellent.
Then moved up to London, and we've been here ever since. And we're British citizens now, and the kids have English accents. So I think this is it for us.
Yeah, you're done. And the farm's sorted. Carrots will grow at some point. Nice. What was Dubai like at that time, like 2008?
Dubai was crazy. So this was at the time, and I loved it, right? And I missed my time there. It's a strange place because people are always coming and going, and so establishing permanent relationships, I think, can be fairly difficult. But it's a place that knows no end to innovation, and has this kind of mentality that nothing is impossible, right? If we throw enough money and effort at it, we can achieve anything. And so projects like could we create rainfall over the desert,
right.
which you and I might look at and say, that's crazy. How can you just create weather? No, they'll give it a go.
Take a look.
And so I think, actually my time there taught me a lot about entrepreneurship, innovation, and kind of this unwavering faith that, look, anything is really possible and you may as well have a go at it. Some of it doesn't work out, but what I respect about that kind of market and that part of the world is they're going to give it a go.
Yeah. And I think what I've heard, I've spent a little bit of time there and been on work trips, but I think everyone's there for working for a reason, right? And it's like, I think that drives a certain innovation, and everyone's got that driven attitude. And I've sort of a couple of people have commented that it's got that feeling to it. But I imagine in 2008 it's been changed. It's a lot changed since then.
Yeah, I've been back a few times, and it's changed and it's grown and it's moved on. But some things kind of remain constant. I think that drive, that energy, that belief in the future and the need to create things, I think that's really kind of at a baseline of the culture, and I think it's really positive.
Yeah, nice. All right, we'll jump on. We'll move on to lesson 2.
Yeah, so I think my second lesson is, and this is one of those lessons that you learn out of a very near failure, and I'd say it was a real pivotal point in my career. It kind of could have either it went the way that it went, which I think was successful. It could have gone very, very badly. And I call this lesson, if you're the smartest person in the room, leave the room. And it comes from, I was back in my days at Tullow, and we were leading an intra-group reorganization, right? It's just kind of moving some of the companies around to make sure that things matched the operational flow, which, it's an important piece of corporate housekeeping, but, you don't want to take much risk on it. And, I'd been working for months with a very senior person in the tax team, and we'd come up with an absolutely brilliant structure that we really thought we'd cracked something here.
Is this what the tax guy told you? This is brilliant.
No, we both thought this is absolutely genius. It was the most efficient way to do this reorg.
Right.
And I recall we kind of had this kickoff meeting, and I had 100-page PowerPoint slide deck that we'd put together, and we fancied ourselves very, very intelligent at this point.
Right.
And we sort of assembled this great panel of advisors, and we get to slide 1, and a question comes. And I understand the question, and I realize that the next 99 pages of the deck are now garbage because we'd missed a very, very basic point. And I kind of had this, you could feel like the chill run through your body. You start thinking, is my career over? How could this have gone so badly? And I was pulled out into the hallway during a coffee break with one of the partners that's been quite a mentor to me. He's retired since from Dixon Minto,
right.
And he sort of kind of coached me and sort of said, look, like you've got some of the best and brightest legal minds in the room from around the world that you've assembled, and you're paying them quite handsomely to be here. Put them to work in service of solving the problem. And I think, there was a real pivot point in my leadership journey there, where I went from, trying to succeed as an associate by demonstrating that I was the best and brightest, which gets you to a point, to then realizing that actually leadership's not about being the best and the brightest. It's about getting the most out of the team that surrounds you, whether that's transactional, working on a project, or kind of, the team that I lead today, right? If I'm better than every person on my team, that's not the best team that I could assemble, and I'm not doing my job. And so I think, that's the lesson that I took out of that is, to really lead, to succeed in leadership over the long run, you want to find people that are smarter and better than you, and you want to coach them and help them be brilliant at what they do, not show them that you're smarter.
Yeah, that's sage advice. I'm probably guilty of it slightly myself. Martin almost got up and left the room there when you first said you're the brightest in the room. I had to stop him. But yeah, so how do you go in, or how do you hire for that?
Yeah, so I now consciously try to hire people that do things that I don't do and think in ways that I don't think. One of the most successful working relationships I've ever had was with the guy Kareem, who's now the GC of Cousins, right? He came in with me at Tullow and then kind of joined me at PZ. And the success of that relationship is that he thinks in a very different way. He prioritizes very different things, and so his strengths complement my weaknesses, and vice versa.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's taught me some really valuable lessons about how to build that team. And I probably in my earlier days built teams that were kind of mini me's and thought the way that I thought, because it's easier to manage people like that. But actually, that tension, that conflict, that difference in way of thinking has built up better thinking and better solutions to problems. So I probably now very consciously think about diversity, but diversity of thought in that way when I structure my teams more than I ever used to.
Yeah. And do you often, like, I see it quite regularly, GCs, CLOs move on and then bring some people with them. Is that always your first point of call?
It's always easy to hire your friends, right?
Yeah.
And with no disrespect to your profession, it's cheaper. But it's I think sometimes I do, when there's a clear and obvious need. At the same time, I always feel that people will move on in their careers. I will probably have another few roles in me before I retire. I mean, I love the company that I'm with right now, but everybody's growing and moving on, and I think I have an obligation to help develop the people within my team to be leaders of tomorrow. So I think whilst I'd be very happy to work with lots of the people on my team in whatever comes next in my journey, I feel I'd be doing them a disservice, because they'd be doing the same job tomorrow that they're doing for me today. And what I'd like to do is see them move up.
Yeah.
And if that means moving on, so be it. If it means me moving on and them taking my place, that's ultimately for the good of the company and for the good of the people. So I don't set out to do it consciously, but I do have a bit of a track record.
Yeah, you certainly do. But yeah, it's a good. I think it's a good thing. I think it speaks volumes for the individual that's being moved across, and the leadership style. It's a good signal to the market. With Kareem that you touched on, like he's stepped into the GC role at PZ Cousins. A lot of people question around, like, what's the succession plan within my business? Like, is there any insights you can share? Like, how would someone know that I'm in light, or like what type of conversations could people have to internally within a business to boost that?
So I mean, I try to have pretty open succession plan conversations with my team, and I think it starts from during our performance reviews and objective setting conversations, we talk about, well, what are your career goals, right? Because I think, as I progressed in my career, one of the things I had to ask myself was, did I want to be a general counsel, right? I wanted to achieve general counsel, but I wasn't sure I wanted to do general counsel day to day. It turns out I do, and I really love what I do, right? But there's some people who you don't want to leave the technical, who want to be, kind of functional experts. And I think we should celebrate that more than we do. But it starts from a conversation about, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? And then you work back from that to say, right, and if that's what you want to achieve, what are the skills and talents and capabilities that you need to develop in order to qualify yourself for that? And how do we build that in a way that helps you deliver what you want to achieve? And whether that's here or elsewhere, or whether that's coaching, whether that's on the job, or whether that's structured learning, right? I think that's how we should have kind of those open conversations about succession. Sometimes it's a difficult conversation. I mean, sometimes you have a conversation with someone who says, I want to be the next general counsel, and you have to say to them, look, I don't see that, right? I don't see that being the right career path for you. But then we try and unpack why, and we try and say, well, is there a blocker that we can get over, or actually is it because the way you're showing up suggests that actually you want to do something else, right? It's that mismatch between a goal that you want to achieve versus what you actually spend your time doing and get passion from, right?
Yeah. And I think the professional services on the whole, most people think that, like, the progress looks like this, and that's where I need to be aiming for. And if I don't achieve that, then or by a certain point, then it's failure, or I've not achieved that. Versus, like you said, celebrating, like, what you're good at, what you enjoy, what gives you energy, yeah, how it's rewarded, how it's celebrated, I guess is a challenge, because there's economics to it. But yeah, I think taking that step back and understanding, where do I, like, really being honest with you have to be honest with yourself at that point, right? And say, is that really what I want?
Yeah.
When did that become the focus for you?
I think there's two moments for me that really stood out. So I went through an executive assessment profile in one of my previous jobs before I stepped up to kind of C-suite level.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the assessment came back, look, you know, ready or nearabouts ready for an executive role. And we had a very honest conversation with the senior management that said, but the GC role is not available.
Mm-hmm.
You know, would you consider another portfolio? Would you want to lateral into something non-legal? And I had a really long, hard think about it, and I loved the company. I was really, really passionate about what they did, and you know, really enjoyed my time there. And I said, well, actually, but would I want to be something else here, or a GC somewhere else? And that's when I kind of really realized, actually, you know, I really wanted to be the head of legal. I thrived on kind of that accountability and kind of the decision making. And actually, I love the law. Mm-hmm. And so whilst I was really happy to take on things like compliance and risk and governance, mm-hmm. and internal controls, and I continue to try and take on more and more of those things to develop myself and learn, mm-hmm. I didn't want to leave the legal portfolio. I didn't want to sort of not have any involvement with the legal team anymore. So I think that was the reflection where I said it was the be versus do kind of challenge.
Yeah, understand. Nice. And that's the governance, risk, the various aspects of the role at the moment. Any of those functions new? Are those?
So internal control is a new one that I've not had before, and I think it's a really interesting challenge, particularly as, you know, Code Provision 29 and the code attestation requirements come in. So, you know, it's something I'd had some experience working on in previous roles, but leading it and owning it, I think is a new one for me. Mm-hmm. And I think actually in my last role and this role, one of the things that I've taken on as kind of a development is, you know, I've been lucky enough to be in businesses that have owned majority stakes in listed subsidiaries, both PZ Cussons and when in Nigeria, and then with Imperial, with Logista in Spain. Mm-hmm. And so I've had the opportunity to actually take on a non-executive director role on the listed subsidiary boards, and I think that's really helped me develop, both in terms of, you know, business networking and kind of understanding the P&L at a more granular level than I necessarily would as a lawyer, but also it's given me the opportunity to sit in the seat of the shareholder and to kind of understand the other side of the table that I've sat on for, you know, as a head of governance, you sit there and say, well, this is what the rules require, and the rules require that because it's in the best interest of the shareholder. Having sat in the seat of the shareholder now and experiencing it the way they experience, I think has helped me develop better judgment in the boards that I advise as well.
On the delivery side, yeah, it's seeing the other person's perspective, even though I'm sure you're aware of it when you're over the years, but being in that seat, so that just came about? That was organically within subsidiaries, and have you ever sought out NED opportunities? Or
so you know, taking on a NED role outside my executive duties is, you know, somewhere else is something that's probably on my list of things that I would like to do. Mm-hmm. You know, I think the last two roles that I've had have been focused a lot on transformation and you know, kind of, you know, really building a future fit function, and that's pretty all consuming, and so I'd probably say right now I don't think I'd necessarily have the time to give it the attention that it deserves, but I do feel like in the next however many years, you know, that it's one of the things that I'd probably like to continue growing and expanding. Yeah.
So in those different the functions, the internal controls, risk, governance within legal, like often there's and it's perhaps just because you're in a bit of an echo chamber, particularly in our sector, in our industry, but the common thing of legal doesn't have a seat at the table, like they don't have the ear of the right people. Is it like seeing the different functions? Does someone who's head of risk, who's head of audit, who's head of like governance, do they have the similar complaints, challenges?
Sometimes I think it's a complex one to unpack, and I think everyone in the business at times feels like they don't have a seat at the right table, right? And I think part of the solution to that is understanding and building trust and understanding that you've got to divide and conquer and that you can't be everywhere to everyone. And so I think that's a journey that I think legal functions often have to go on. And I think it's difficult because you have a lot of people that come straight out of private practice. And in private practice, you are the business. You are what generates the revenue for the firm. And when you move into a business, you're now, frankly, a cost center. You can become a revenue generator as well, but you have to earn that position. And I think the experience and the learning that the right way to approach it is to say, I have to earn my voice. I have to earn my seat at the table because nobody is obligated to listen to me. I think once you embed that into your thinking, life gets a little bit easier within a corporate. Whereas I think what I struggle with sometimes when I hear, we don't have the right seat at the table, we're not. Okay, but at the core of that, I find is a little bit of an entitlement problem where it's but you have to consult with me. No, we don't.
Yeah.
Right? We really do. Lawyers are, and I'll say it controversially, lawyers are not always necessary, right? They can add huge value. And I think that they should be consulted often more than they are. But we all, as a profession, have to internalize that and realize we have to earn that seat. And I think once we kind of get, and it's, when I talk to my team in risk, when I talk to my team in controls, you see less of that. I think you see more of a view that actually they know that they have to earn that voice. It's still there. It's still there at times. But I think what I try and coach my juniors on is to say, look, you'll get the seat at the table, but you have to demonstrate what you're going to add when you're in that seat. You don't just get it because you're legal.
Right, interesting. Yeah, and it's not just, they're not dying for that advice unless it's the real value add. Good. I just thought I'd ask with the perspective across the functions. We'll move on to your third lesson.
Yeah, so my third lesson is all about networking and giving back. And I want to talk about a guy who's been a real mentor to me for a large part of my career, a guy called Jay Kellerman. So Jay is formerly the managing partner of a big Canadian firm called Stikeman Elliott, one of the sort of big 7 firms in Canada. And so when I was finishing my training contract, I went to Toronto and I did interviews, and Jay interviewed me for a role at Stikeman Elliott, and he was the head of the mining securities practice at the time, which in Canada is a big practice. Yeah. And I ended up choosing another firm, and I thought, look, Jay seems like a nice guy. It's probably the last time I'll ever see him. Many years later, one of the partners at Ashurst, who we were doing some work with, said, "Oh, there's one of your fellow Canadians is in town. Let me introduce you to him. This guy called Jay Kellerman." And I met Jay, and I re-met Jay. I was a bit sheepish, and I had not seen him in a decade. And Jay looks at me and he just goes, "I interviewed you for a job many years ago." I said, "How do you remember that?" So I was just 30 minutes, and I thought it was a fun meeting. I told my wife the story, and I honestly thought I'd probably never see him again. And he kept in touch, right? And he kept in touch despite the fact that there was no overlap between our business and his firm. There was no reasonable prospect of him getting work out of it. But he kept in touch, and we developed a relationship. I now consider him a very good friend. And what it taught me was, prior to that, I think a lot of my networking and a lot of my relationship building professionally was quite transactional. Right. And it was based on what can I get out of this? And actually, I think what Jay's taught me is that, help comes from the strangest of sources and probably never from where you expect it to come from, whether it be referrals or help in a time of crisis. And that you're never too busy to be nice to people, and you're never too busy to network authentically and just build relationships with people as people, right? And Jay has given so much of his time to me and others to help develop the next generation of lawyers. I think it's taught me a real meaningful lesson about building personal relationships and giving back to the profession without an expectation of return, right? And so I'd say the lesson that I've taken away from that is that I don't view my networking as transactional anymore. I view it as relationship building, and I invest in people that I connect with. And, as and when it's needed, you'll find help from your network, whether it's them reaching out to their networks or from where you never expect it. But, I don't bother with the transactional stuff anymore. I connect with people as people, or at least I try to.
Nice. And what? That's, yeah, great story and example. Sounds like, so is he still at Steinman Elliott?
Yeah, he is. No, he's still there. I see him. He comes through the London office frequently, and there's always a cause for a cup of coffee or a dinner. But and again, it's never about work, right? Yeah. It's that'll come. It's always about how's the family? What can we do to help build the profession? What's on your mind? Mentorship. Nice. And it's just a really good, authentic way to communicate with people.
Right. Sounds like a really good guy. We'll tag him in the notes.
This will finally be the referral that I give him after so many years.
Yeah, some big mining projects going on this year, right? That's for sure. In the UK, a few people on the podcast. How do you like the genuine connection? How do you, because you meet loads of people. How do you? Is there anything you look for in those early moments of a relationship that you think this is worth investment?
It's a good question. I think I look for people who want to connect as people, right? I look for people who want to, I try to listen actively and listen genuinely and learn about people and get to understand them. And I look for people who want to do the same with me. I think it's more on the negative side where, if I sense that people are immediately going into a sales pitch or kind of looking for what they can get out of their relationship with me, I don't have time for that, and I also realize that I don't need to network there because when the transaction suits, it'll be there, right?
Yeah.
So I look for people who are just genuinely curious and want to learn and understand and build a relationship and just talk. I find most people out there are actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But I think it's whether or not they're willing to kind of let their guard down and let that side of them come through.
That's and someone seeking it out in them. I think like as I get older and like you mentioned being in Dubai and it's hard to make like connections with people. It's quite transient. So we've moved to the Netherlands and similarly our kids were in international school. But it's a big old ask getting in, trying to build like friendships with people, and similarly within business. But there's like an energy I think you get from people and it's like curiosity I think is a big part of it, and just genuine. Sometimes a sparkle in their eye. I say to my wife, if there's someone like a school parent, I'm like, nah, they didn't have it. they're not a Sunday lunch crew. But nice. Well, that's a great final lesson to close on. So we're going to try, this is a segment called the GC's Hot or Not. And what I'm going to do is throw a few statements or scenarios or alternatives at you and just want your answer of hot or not and a quick synopsis of why.
Scott, I'm not good at quick synopsis, but I'll give it a go.
We're flying through this episode, Kevin, so we're good. So we'll start, which maybe touches on your last lesson, but legal. So think of this as a conference agenda piece, a legal conference. So legal as a business partner.
As a conference agenda piece, not.
Why not?
Look, it's really topical, and we've got to do it, and we know we've got to do it. I've not been to a single conference where anyone says anything beyond, we've really got to do it.
We need to see.
Right? There's no answer on how. It's networking. So I don't know. I've not learned anything from those. I've been on some of those panels, by the way,
right,
where I've said nothing helpful other than you really need to be a business partner.
Right. Okay.
So I no, not.
Okay. Cool. So what about legal conferences for lawyers by lawyers?
I'm going to say hot with a caveat.
Right.
So some of them are fantastic because they give an opportunity to meet GCs and other senior legal professionals that you wouldn't meet in your day-to-day life and to learn from each other and to kind of co-create. Mm-hmm. The ones where you sit in an auditorium full of 500 people and you get a sales pitch from the sponsor, not.
Right.
So I'm going to say lukewarm, some hot, some not.
Yeah, got it. That's good. When have you found them the most useful in your career? Like at what stage of your career?
Probably two stages. One where I was coming up through the ranks of the in-house, and it was useful to build an external network that I didn't have because I had private practice and I had my team, but I didn't know anybody externally. So that was really useful. And then I'd say probably now as a GC, moving industry to industry, building up new networks that are kind of industry relevant and sector relevant, I think it's been really helpful.
Okay, nice. This one might have a bias slant, but international mobility as a legal professional.
Hot. Very hot.
Yeah.
It's an absolute necessity. No. Look, I think it depends. If you work in a business that is primarily local, then I don't think it's that necessary. If you're a functional expert in a very niche area of law, I don't think it's practical. But if you want to work for a big international business, I don't think you can succeed anymore coming from, say, it's a UK PLC. I don't think you can succeed anymore coming from the ground floor in the UK but never going out to any of the markets, right? It's where the money's made. It's where the value's created. You've got to spend some time in an operating office. Yeah. My time in Cape Town was some of the most valuable time I ever spent at the coalface where the value is generated. Really helped me when I came back to head office.
Right. Is there that mobility at Imperial?
Yeah, we do a fair amount. I mean, as a multinational business, I mean, there's lots of mobility. There's been less within the legal function, but I think it's one of the things that I want to try and create and promote.
Yeah, nice. And then finally, law firm choice. This might be controversial or preference, but Magic Circle or US firms?
Someone's going to get mad at me when I answer this one. I'm going to say right now, and I'll put a caveat on it. US firms hot, Magic Circle not.
Right.
But I think, look, I fundamentally believe that law firms the world over are collections of individuals, and there's excellent people everywhere, and there's less than excellent people everywhere. I think right now, the US firms have a bit of the magic bullet in terms of the blend of commercial and legal advice and kind of, really tailoring it to business practicalities. I think the Magic Circle's catching up, right? I think they'll get there, right? I mean, they're and particularly with the new US mergers. So but today I think the US firms are hot at the moment.
Right. And what if a CV landed on your desk, Magic Circle or US?
For a CV, look, I mean, like I said, I think there's talented lawyers everywhere. I think what I hire for is partly, pedigree and technical training, but I hire more for attitude, and I hire more for, why do you want to come in-house in this business? Do you really want to drive the business forward? Do you really want to kind of take off the private practice shackles and be more of a commercial-minded expert than a lawyer? And there's loads of those people in the Magic Circle. So I mean, I would treat it based on an individual case.
On individual, yeah, and yeah, I mean, you'd have to ask them to take their salary expectations off if they're coming from a US law firm anyway, as an NQ, the NQ salaries you see these days. So all good. All right, that was GC's Hot or Not. Thank you for being our guinea pig, our first to take part. We'll keep the segment. I'm also asking, just as a roundup, so legal awards and that piece, which might come into the hot or not questions.
I was just going to say, are we back to hot or not?
No, we're not. But if your team or yourself, you were General Counsel of or CLO of the year globally, and you had a walk-on song that you were asked to come out to, what would your tune be?
Oh no! So I'm terrible at this because my daughter makes fun of me for listening to the saddest emo music on earth. So I'm not really good at kind of like triumphant walk-on songs.
What's your go-to music? What's your Spotify? Spotify Wrapped.
Oh, my Spotify Wrapped is like music that would like make you think I need psychological help. It's sort of like 90s emo, alt folk rock, so like the Decemberists and Right. So no, I think. Walk-on song. I got to go with "We Are the Champions."
Nice.
Just to rub everyone else's faces.
Perfect. To make friends.
Exactly.
Make more connections.
At least I didn't say another one bites the dust.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, that would be the ultimate. Well, thank you so much. It's been great I knew it would be a really good conversation, but it's been fantastic. So thanks for
Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks, Kevin.